Welcome. I hope you enjoy the conversation you're about to see between me and another comedian about religion and comedy. These are conversations I'm calling disorganized religion. God bless. And for those atheists out there, may nothing await you after this life.
Welcome, everybody. Hey, nerds. Another edition of Disorganized Religion, the coronavirus editions. I am very excited for this week's guest. And I guess, should introduce myself. I'm your host, as always, Seth Lawrence. And this week we have the fantastically bearded and almost Jesus-like Nick Linsmayer. Thank you so much for joining us, Nick.
Great to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you, man. So how are things going for you in the COVID era?
You know, to be honest, I'm not doing too badly. I know of a lot of people who are suffering, and I read the news, obviously, to see what's going on. I'm almost counter-cyclical when it comes to income and just like, I don't know, life stability. I have not had such stability in almost 2 years. I have a good paying job right now. I'm back in Minnesota, where I'm from, the Twin Cities.
Yeah.
And I'm working at a family business where it's very boring stuff, generally speaking, because it's like wood manufacturing. So boxes and pallets for shipping on forklifts, that sort of thing. But like right now, it's actually pretty important because they make them for 3M, which obviously N95 masks.
Yeah.
So it's a good place to be. The hospitals are all good here for the most part. There's not many people who have it.
Yeah.
And I'm getting up, working relatively normal hours, and my income is steady, unlike doing stand-up or some of the other stuff I was doing in LA. So
yeah. What other stuff were you doing for work in LA while you were here?
For a little bit, I was basically production managing some ads for social media. So, you know, pretty much on a project-by-project basis, not a steady flow of income and no 401k or anything like that. Not that I'm rolling that now, but...
Yeah, but a bit more stability then.
Yeah.
So you guys make pallets at your family business?
Yep.
Got it. Man, the building blocks of the shipping industry.
Yeah, it's really thrilling. I worked there for 5 summers, starting in high school and into college. And oh my God, like you think it's the technology change you get in 130 some years now of the company being around. It's almost non-existent. It's basically the same thing, you know, wood and nails.
Well, and one design, right? There's sort of one design for the pallet.
Pretty standard.
And you'd think that they would have figured that out. Windshield wipers is another one. It's sort of always been the same, you know?
Pretty much.
One day, those inventions are going to improve, and whoever patents that down is going to be the next Jeff Bezos or whatever.
That's right. How do you find you're doing during the COVID era? I'm curious to hear a man with a family. What is it like? Because I can't even imagine having kids in the situation.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I mean, there was for sure a week and a half of pretty big adjustment. And, you know, so I have 3 kids, so there are 5 people where we're living now. And, you know, it gets a little heated at times, but we're surviving, I think, okay. The adjustment came with getting 2 of my kids are in school, and they had to move to online stuff. So we had to kind of schedule out when they each used my computer so that they could log in while my wife did her work. My wife's work has not, it changed a bit because she's teaching. When she teaches, it's online now. But for the most part, she does research, and, you know, that's exactly the same as it was before. She just does not have to commute into downtown LA anymore.
Nice.
So that part's been a bit more stable for us.
What does she teach?
Accounting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Another thrilling industry.
Thrilling, but stable. You know, yeah, exactly. And with all these high risk jobs, you know, like stand up, where there's sort of big, you know, some of us are going to make it out of the open mic ranks and maybe make it big one day. You know, high risk, high reward, I guess. We'll see. We'll see what happens. How do you think stand-up's going to change after or because of the stay-at-home order stuff?
It will really be, I think, a slow getting back to normal. And, you know, people are at least going to have to address the state of the world in the first few minutes. It's unavoidable, of course.
Yeah.
So you have to have some good jokes, just chatting with people, some friends on Zoom last night. And one of them said after I happened to say something quite funny that stemmed from real life, he said, "Oh my God, you guys aren't writing material right now, are you?" And I'm not as religious about writing as I was before this all happened, because I'm working more now. But like, I am jotting things down still as they strike me. So I'm trying to at least devote some time to it.
Yeah. So do you have a notebook, or do you just type it in your phone or
Phone.
Twitter? What do you do?
Yeah.
Phone?
Yep. Phone and Twitter.
Yeah. I like using Twitter. I think Josh Edelman does the same thing, sort of tries out new jokes or things he's thinking about on Twitter first, see what kind of response it gets.
Yeah. Very prolific.
Yeah. So how long have you been doing stand-up, Nick?
It's been about a couple of years. I started back in 2017. I was working a really crazy job at Amazon Studios. And then the Me Too movement happened in the fall of 2017. And the boss of Amazon Studios at the time was ousted in that. And so my boss went from the number 2 guy to the number 1 within an afternoon. And so I had to stop because I was just so busy and I couldn't think about anything else for the rest of my time at that company, which was stressful.
Yeah. And you were scared, right? You were scared of having the Me Tooers come for you.
Well, luckily I have nothing to hide from. I'm a very good-hearted man whose actions reflect that. But
yeah. Well, I mean, you could give too long of a hug. You know, the Pixar guy gave too long of a hug and got outed.
I've always been pretty circumspect with physical touch.
Yeah.
Minnesotans, they get their culture from the Nordic people in Europe, and they tend to stand very far away. That's why we're doing so well in Corona.
There you go.
One of the lowest rates in the country.
Yeah.
Even though we had one of the earliest cases, people came directly from Italy, one of the busiest airports, and yet we're keeping our distance.
You're fine. Oh, interesting. Now, is Minnesota the state where they've the governor has stopped selling non-essential items?
Well, we do have a stay-at-home order, and so much of this is basically a heavy-handed please and thank you.
Yeah.
They're not going to write many people tickets. I've heard they've done it a few times.
Is that right?
State of 5.8 million people, so it's not like it's just to discourage people. But essential businesses like the one I'm at are still operating, obviously. Yeah. And they still, like a lot of places, keep liquor stores open, so they want to keep people boozed up. I don't drink, but hey,
I mean,
if people don't get their booze, they're
the last thing we need right now is another prohibition, organized crime resurgence.
That's right,
man. So do you go into work with gloves and mask?
I have a bandana. I don't have an N95 or anything, but I got a bandana, and I've got. I wear gloves when I'm out in the factory, and like safety glasses, but otherwise I just try to keep my distance.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. And people probably keep their distance from you, boss's son. They don't want to.
There's always good, gentle ribbing here. Like people are saying, I don't care what anybody says. You're doing a great job. That sort of thing. Which is nice.
That's great. Yeah, that's very nice. So a couple of years ago, do you remember where your first open mic was?
Yeah, I did it at West Side Comedy Theater.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Santa Monica.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a fun little stage. So did you go on the Monday night or Tuesday night? Is it Tuesday night?
I guess it must have been a Tuesday night. It felt earlier than, maybe I think they had it on Saturdays then too.
Oh, is that right?
Like early evening. It was like 7 or something in the summertime. And yeah, I was very nervous to do it, but a buddy of mine who's moved to LA shortly before I did, who makes movies now, he did stand up, and that was really the kick in the pants I needed. Another guy to say, I'll do it. I'll be there with you.
Yeah. Gotcha. So Amazon got too busy for you. Was it just not fulfilling, or was it?
It was very political, very much like you have to love it, live it, and breathe it. Wake up at 5 a.m. and check your email. You have to be in it constantly.
Yeah.
Wake up doing it, go to bed doing it. So that wasn't for me. I always wanted to do stand up, and I tried it, and I got my taste for it. And after a little bit over a year at Amazon, I just was able to leave with good letters of recommendation and good enough experience that I thought time to move on.
Yeah. Interesting. So you'd always wanted to do stand up. What prevented you from doing stand up before?
Good question. I was 25 the first time I tried it. I had actually told my family. My family's always known I've loved comedy. Always been
Mhm.
considered, a funny kid in school, that sort of thing. And my mom and sister actually bought me, rather than stand-up, typical mistake, they bought me improv classes shortly
Ah,
after college.
yeah.
And so I did that for a couple times. I was living in DC at the time, but
Okay.
that was right at the time I started doing that improv class, and then I came out as gay, which
Uh-huh.
was a big thing. And so before I did stand-up, I wanted to figure out who I was as a person, because I
Yeah.
grew up pretty religious in a Christian household, and I finally came to terms with who I was and that I wasn't going to change.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, maybe a traumatic brain injury would change me, but I figured if I haven't changed after 23 years, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. And that might change you too much, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you might still be gay.
Yeah.
So what
The
would be the
dumbed down
point,
gay
right?
guy. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's terrible. So your friend who did stand up, he like pushed you into it. You'd always been interested, and he was just. Did it take much convincing from him to get you to go to
Not too
West
much.
Side?
And in fact, he did not end up going with me to that mic. He ended up
Oh,
being busy that night, but it got me so like nervous. I'm like, I can't not do it.
yeah.
And I think my husband, I'm still married, but we're separated. He went with
Uh-huh.
me, which was nice.
Yeah.
And I was nervous, obviously, and heart racing, but I was really glad to get it out of the way because, it was around the time of my dad's birthday. And there's something about, my birthday or family member's birthday, just gets you thinking about mortality. It's a motivator,
Sure.
isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So, what do you like about stand up?
Well, there's nothing quite like just having an idea and totally without any other validation other than your own writing process and your own craziness to test it in front of people.
Yeah.
No more instant gratification. So I really enjoy that.
Yeah. Have you ever wanted to quit?
Not really. I mean, I'm kind of maybe pig-headed or bull-headed, whatever the expression is. Where, like
Sure.
it's something I love so much, and I don't care about one bad experience really. I mean, it'll
Yeah.
be discouraging, but I'll keep going.
Yeah. 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 What's one night that you feel like you keep chasing, or that
Uh,
keeps you going, right? Like
yeah,
what is one moment of the many that you've had?
yeah, so many great ones.
Yeah.
Uh, well, I've just this year I had always wanted to perform at the Comedy Store since I've been in LA 3 years,
Yeah.
and it's a glorified bringer, but it's in the original room.
Oh
Um,
yeah, that's
the
great.
Deep Nuts shows. I've done a couple of those this year, and those
Uh-huh.
have been very gratifying because just that stage, there's a feeling to it. There's an electricity to the room, and I know I wasn't like the best of the night or anything, but I got
Hmm.
enough laughs that it really just gives you a surge of energy. So I'm definitely chasing that.
Yeah, that's great. So how did the light situation work in the OR at the Comedy Store? Because I've been there for potluck, and it
Yeah.
always seems a little bit awkward. If I imagine being up, I've never gotten picked to do their open mic.
Hmm.
Unbelievable. But because their light is off to the side of the stage.
Right. That
So
little
maybe for the
star.
viewers and listeners, explain a little bit the OR layout and how you
Yes.
dealt with that light.
So the original room at the Comedy Store is about 170, 180 seats, I think. It's a pretty much a rectangle. And on the left-hand side of the stage, as the performer, you see among the many neon signs of the famous people who perform there, this little star. And they light you. I don't know. I always try to keep track of the room. I'm not one of these, really heady comics like, one-liner guys. Some of them just stare straight ahead and they never like alter their position.
Right.
I'm also not one of these Sebastian Maniscalco pacing the stage, so I don't know, I'm
Yeah.
somewhat in between. I try to be aware. I use my hands a lot, and I end up seeing it. And I haven't, run the light too bad or anything, so I think it's worked out. By the way, have you
Yeah.
done any of the like bringer shows at the store? Have you done any of the D's Nuts?
Yeah, I did not do the D's Nuts shows. I did the shows. I'm trying to remember who put them on. It's been a while since I've done them. Why can't I think of her name right now? It's gonna bother me. But she did Friday night, Saturday night shows in the Belly Room.
Okay,
Uh,
nice.
is the title of the show.
Gotcha.
So there's no other way to say it other than the title.
Yeah.
Why can't I think of who puts those on? It's going to bother me.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to see if I can find her in my
We could
Messenger.
describe her, but I don't want to insult anybody.
Yeah, I mean, she just barely got a job with JFL for their most recent cycle of the last year, I think 2019. Yeah, she's great, very nice. I've never had an issue with her. Why can't I think of her name?
Fun show.
Yeah, they were fun shows. And I did them for almost a year. It was about a year that I did them once a month.
Cool.
And bringer shows are tough though. And I've heard, and maybe you can give me your thoughts on this, I've heard that doing the bringer shows too often can be detrimental if others see you at the Comedy Store who are in charge of, booking or, referring you to the booker.
Right.
Because they'll see you as a bringer, not as a, genuine stand-up.
Yeah.
Have you heard the same thing?
I kind of have sensed that. I've never heard it expressed in that way, but I don't know. I hope that Vargas seems to be getting a better reputation with them. He's bringing a lot of money. His shows have been, he does the D's Nuts shows. They've been sold out. They were for almost this, I think this entire year, all the shows.
Yeah.
And also his are like kind of a hybrid bringer because he tells new people, you got to bring 10 people. But then if you've done it before, even if you didn't have 10 and he likes you and you did well, he might invite you back. So
see, and that's proper. I think that's the way it should work. You know,
he's a nice guy. He's a stand-up guy.
Yeah.
Get
No pun intended.
The money. That's right.
Sweet. Yeah. So I'm glad Vargas has been treating you well. So you feel like you don't have to bring as many people now as you did when you first started with him.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, all the Comedy Store shows seem to sell out anyway. So, and that was my, sort of hiccup with it. It was like, you're selling out anyway. I mean, there were a couple shows I did where they sold out before I even got the link. Jeez. And then I was still told, well, if you don't bring 10 people, you're not doing time. It's like, well, there are no tickets left. Like, what does it matter to you? If I bring 10 or if, 10 just wander off the street, like just put them in my name.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's not fair.
Anyhow, so yeah, the bringer shows it's an awkward, I think, perhaps even archaic necessity. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe that'll change after Corona, COVID-19.
Yeah. Oof. I don't even know. In some ways, I feel like, this could all cause people to drop out because obviously the financial instability, people who are barely scraping by now won't be able to make it. And at the same time, I think that might be balanced out by like a carpe diem sense. People are like, well, I've always wanted to do it. So if not now, when? Yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah. I don't know. I think maybe on the net, it won't change at all how many of us are out there, but there might be some new faces and some faces that we never see again, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
We'll have to see what the damage is like after the stay-at-home stuff. Now, you and I are, I think, pretty good friends. And I know a little bit of your story about your husband or ex. Which do you prefer to refer to him as?
My husband that I'm separated from.
Yeah, the husband that you're separated from. Do you want to explain this story? Do you want to get into this? Because you dropped two sort of huge bombs, right? One is that you were raised religious, came out as homosexual, and the other is that you were married but not married.
Yeah. By the way, can I say, I think homosexual is like the worst slur you can say nowadays for gays.
Is that right?
Like, faggot, queer, I don't know. Homosexual just sounds so like.
Is it too clinical?
It's not even clinical. It's like old Bible, not with this is love and forgiveness.
All right, sorry. So
it's like hell and brimstone is what it is.
Yeah. So you came out as a sodomite. Is that better?
I was actually called that on stage at Echoes on Pico.
No kidding.
This woman who was running the show, there was like 5 people there. This was maybe a year ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I'm gay. And she's like, you're a sodomite. I've never been called that, but thank you for saying it while I'm on stage.
Wow.
I'm already not getting a reaction from the audience.
Yeah. So was it a heckle or was it like a friendly jab?
I don't think I'll ever know, but I have never seen the woman again. She may have been an angel. I think she was my guardian angel.
Maybe so.
I needed that to grow is what happened.
Of course you did.
I did.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. I'm gonna have to write down to refer to all gay people as sodomites. Only the males, though, right? Only the
You'll do them
males.
a favor.
Unbelievable. So yeah, which I want to move into your religious
Sure.
upbringing and coming out as gay. But yeah, let's talk maybe a little bit about your husband that you're
Sure.
separated from.
Well, he's a great-
Tammy Jo Deeren, that's her name.
very good.
Finally found it.
Tammy,
She's great.
excellent.
Yeah.
He's a great guy as well. My husband, from whom I am separated.
Yeah.
And he, I met him in D.C. We were both living in D.C. at the time.
And you were what,
Sorry,
22?
I don't understand.
23.
What? Google.
And-
23.
Yep. We basically, I had come out only like 6 months before. I had dated maybe half a dozen guys.
Yeah.
And, it was interesting to meet new people and actually be dating people I felt some interest in.
Yeah.
Um,
So when you dated women,
yeah.
no physical attraction at all.
Almost none.
Interesting.
Basically a couch cushion would have been
No
a good
joke.
thing. Like if it's pressed up against you, you're gonna feel something.
A heated
regardless.
couch cushion. A heated couch cushion, at least.
Yeah, exactly.
At least give them
Look
that.
what this can give.
Unbelievable. Interesting. Okay.
So we met there the summer of 14,
Uh-huh.
15. And anyway, nobody gives a shit about the year. I love when people fixate
No.
on it. They need to
Well,
get
you
it.
know, I was
exact
fixated
time
on
and
the
date.
name. You're fixated on the year. It's
And
fine.
we ended up falling madly in love with each other right away.
Yeah.
And so we'd write these long, crazy emails about, like being soulmates and stuff very early
Yeah.
on. And I'm a very jaded and I think relatively, I think I have some perspective when it comes to relationships because my parents are both, they've had marriages before. My mom is divorced once. My dad divorced twice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my dad especially, relatively older when they had me. So I always thought, wait a long time before you get married.
Sure.
And so we were falling deeply in love with each other right away. He moved in with me basically after a few months. And within just a little over a year after we met, we had decided to get married and we got married. So
Yeah.
we went to the courthouse in D.C. We flew to Bermuda for a nice little honeymoon, which is actually very convenient, by the way. If you're ever in D.C.,
Yeah.
pop over to Bermuda. It's not that far.
Yeah. Anywhere out of Dulles is not too bad, right?
Yeah. And
Or it's the Reagan Airport in DC.
both work. Yeah,
Yeah.
both are easy. BWI as well. Let's
Right.
get into the regional airports of the Mid-Atlantic. I think that's what your listeners want to hear.
Let's do. Oh my gosh. All right. So you're in Bermuda.
Yeah, we did
Bahamas.
a quick vacation there.
Yeah.
And we were very happy together. We moved to LA. We started to grow apart, and we separated about a year ago. So
Yeah. Wow.
been
And yeah, holy smokes. So he is from the U.S.
he's from Ukraine.
Ukraine.
Yeah.
So do you feel like was he a citizen? Was he naturalized?
He was in the country on a work visa.
Uh-huh.
And he's still great and doing great work and all that, and he could have probably gotten an extended work visa,
Yeah.
but there's a lottery system, as you probably know,
Yeah.
and they're very
Expensive.
obviously unpredictable.
Yep.
Expensive and unpredictable. It's not cheap as well to do
Right.
the marriage thing, but especially if it's a crapshoot whether or not you're going to
Right.
so we decided the safest thing to be together was to get married, and so
Yeah.
we did, and I still love him very much. And if you're listening, U.S. government, I will go to bat for him. It was a bona fide marriage. You can go yourselves, dirty cocksucking feds, okay? And I use cocksucking not in the literal sense, but in
Right.
the pejorative, you're a piece of sense.
Right.
So,
Not in the peaceful sodomite sense. Just.
and by the way,
yeah.
speaking of piece of never eaten ass, never will, disgusting, okay? By the way, that's where the next coronavirus is coming from. I mark my words.
Yeah.
Somebody in Silver Lake right now who's eating kimchi and kombucha, which are good foods, mind you, but not coming out the other end. All that crazy microbiome diversity, that's going to be the next,
Wow.
wet market in China. That's the next.
Not
pandemic.
not
So-
bats, but butts. That's Nick's prediction.
There you go. That's the tagline. I need that. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. So you don't feel used at all for a green card or for...
Not at all.
Yeah.
I know his family. He knows my family. We're, it's bona fide.
Yeah.
As can be. Like, it's one of those things in your heart as much as anything.
Yeah. So what for you was it that drove you two apart?
Well, I think our communication began to just not be as synchronized, and just a number of things.
Yeah.
It little day-to-day things, and that's all I'll say about it. I don't know. I don't want to
fair enough.
People. I'd rather talk about BWI Airport.
And we can move there.
By the way, you can take the train there very easily from DC. So that's...
Which line is it that you need, though?
You just take. You can take the Amtrak. It's just like 2 stops.
Oh, okay. I thought at first you meant subway, but you're talking about above ground train.
But you go to Union Station in DC.
Yeah.
Take the subway there, and then take the Amtrak.
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. It's a beautiful station, Union Station.
Yeah.
Really.
Now we're talking. This is good.
Now we're talking. Yeah. Oh my word. Interesting. So, because 23 is young. I got married at 23.
I was technically 24 when we were married. We were both 24, but
we
met at 23.
Met when 23.
Yeah, exactly.
Still young.
It is.
Right?
Yeah, the year doesn't make a huge difference.
Yeah.
How did you and your wife meet?
So I had reached a point. I was dating a woman that I thought I was going to marry, and she met my family, and it went terribly. So
really?
Yeah.
How long have you two been dating?
She and I had known each other for a long time. And by long time, I mean 6-7 months before we even thought about dating each other. Then we started dating, and we dated for, I don't remember now, probably another 8, 9, 10 months, almost a year.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Mormon dating is a little bit different than dating in what I gather the real world, the common masses. There's a lot of group dating that goes on in the Mormon culture. So, we were hanging out a lot, but we didn't really start, pairing off or going on just me and her dates for quite a while. Yeah.
Interesting. How many people are in these group situations? This is the first I'm hearing of this.
Oh yeah, it just depends. It just depends, and it depends sort of on the dynamic of the group and then the guy-girl relationship. So sometimes it transitions very quickly to if not just the pair, then maybe 3 or 4 other, maybe 2 or 3 other couples.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So it just depends. We had, I was living on BYU campus when she and I met, and in a pretty big group of friends. It was sort of her apartment and a friend's apartment, and then this group of my friends, our apartment, that started all hanging out together.
Cool.
But anyway, so that had gone south. I had basically, that was a tough one for me to let go of, and had sort of reached this point where I was like, I'm not going to go out and pursue a relationship.
Mm-hmm. And that was after she had met your family. That's when it went south.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So she and I broke up a couple weeks after she met my family officially. And then, few, I think maybe a month and a half, 2 months after that, I was on campus, ran into an old friend of mine who, said that he knew of someone that he wanted to set me up with, and if I was available. And I said, yeah, sure. So I went out on this blind date, what I thought was a blind date. And she and I hit it off great. And, we ended up getting married a little less than a year after that.
Very cool.
Yeah. Come to find out, she had asked him to set us up because she'd seen me at some other activity on campus. And when he said that he was my friend and could make it happen, he ended up making it happen. So,
nice.
Yeah. So that's how my wife and I met.
Oh, excellent.
She dragged me out of the embers of my past life and brought me to the point I am now.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you this, because for me, and I talked to a shrink about this because I was like, before we got married, I'm like, am I rushing into this? I wanted to get perspective. Obviously, my family I asked and friends.
Yeah.
And I figured we had probably condensed the amount of time because we were living together within a few months, probably
Sure.
condensed the amount of time that your average couple takes several years to get even.
Yeah.
How much time were you and your wife spending together before you guys got married?
Oh, now you're back. You're
Okay.
back.
I haven't had any issues.
We've had some technical difficulties on my end. Spectrum sucks balls. That's all I'm going to
really
say.
does. I was on the phone with an hour with them last week. Such a pain.
It's and they know they have you, Anyway, it's terrible. Oh no, you're frozen. Are you still there?
I'm here.
Oh, good.
You froze for a second too, but I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, heavily discouraged, if not absolutely outright forbidden, for a man and woman to live together and not be married.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I can understand that, I should say.
Yeah. So my wife and I, obviously, we're not living together, but we spent quite a bit of time together. I don't know. I mean, I think, yeah, you're as a Latter-day Saint, we are very heavily encouraged to remain celibate,
Right.
chaste before marriage. So my wife and I were virgins when we got married, and I'm sure some of the biological need drove us to get married sooner than maybe we otherwise would have.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's also counteracted with our focus on our religion and placing faith in God and in sort of following our gut, feeling like we're making a good choice.
Mm-hmm.
So in Mormon culture, it's pretty heavily suggested that you pray, meditate, whatever term you want to use. We call it prayer. Pray to God and ask, figure out if this is, if you have God's blessing, essentially. It's not supposed to be a situation where you place it on God. Oh,
Okay.
There you are.
I can hear you again.
So I was saying in Mormon culture, it is not a thing. So I said I prayed about my decision.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear that in Mormon culture, you're not supposed to put sort of decisions that you make on God.
Okay.
Right. So it wasn't that I prayed, God, should I marry this woman? It was, I am going to marry her, and waiting to see if you feel right about it. And just, sort of this, like, I ask you for your blessing kind of approach, right?
Yeah.
I've decided to do this. Is there something I'm missing or I should be aware of that I had not thought about?
Mm-hmm.
So anyhow, I think our time, I don't know. It is an interesting dynamic in the Mormon culture. You don't spend, every waking hour with the person you're going to marry. You certainly don't have sex with them before marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know how that's going to work out. But I think in the grand scheme of things, she and I dated, and once we felt like we were going to be married, you start dating with a different purpose. The conversations also change. Mm-hmm. To where you figure out, can I actually talk with this person? Do we connect on a more intellectual and emotional level rather than just, pop culture or basic interests?
Yeah.
And honestly, sex, I think, is one of those things where anyone else could satisfy that need, right? Like, it's just basically physical.
Yeah. For the most part.
Right. So so we didn't spend every moment together, but I think our focus was proper. It's worked out so far. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I want to go back to what you said for a second about meditation / prayer, because you really almost equivocated those. How long is prayer for you, and have you ever done any meditations like TM or whatever, any long form 20-minute plus just secular meditations?
Not by choice have I done the guided meditation or the TM stuff. So I'll answer your first question, then I'll get back to
Yeah.
how I've done the guided meditation, which is a
Sure.
ridiculous story.
Okay, good.
Prayer, I think, it's very personal and very different in length. It depends on, what you're praying about. So we'll pray before we eat, and sometimes, usually those prayers are pretty short. There have been times in my life when I have prayed about certain things, or been in a state of mind, where I was either depressed or just down, where I pray for longer.
Yeah.
And
You remember your longest prayer sesh? Like, were you going crazy, like sweating and everything? Just like, is there a posture you have to assume as well?
I mean, it's suggested that you kneel. If you sort of kneeling is the more reverent form, but no, there is no required stance, position, choreography.
Fair enough.
Yeah. No, I think my longer prayers were in my teenage years, where, I was really just struggling with either friend relationships or personal decisions, choices that I was making. And there's not, when you're exploring life, trying to figure out how you can be happy, and if religion is really necessary. I dealt with a lot of that as a teenager. I feel like there are certainly questions I still have, but so I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Well, just give me an average ballpark. What kind of prayer time are we talking? But
for longer prayers,
let's say
maybe like a half hour.
Wow.
Maybe 45 minutes. Maybe.
Would you do that on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis?
We are, it's recommended that you pray every morning, every night, and then at meal times.
Yeah.
I was better at that when I didn't have kids. I was better about regularly praying. Now with kids, it's gotten a little bit more difficult. We definitely have family prayers, at dinner time, for the food and stuff, but we should do better about family prayers at night and in the morning. Yeah.
Okay.
So most of them are pretty short, maybe a minute, 2 minutes. That's a pretty long blessing on the food.
Yeah.
Most of our prayers, because our kids are also saying them sometimes, maybe 5-10 seconds. Pretty quick stuff. Yeah. The only time I've done meditation is when I was in law school. They started at UNC, which is where I went to law school, Chapel Hill.
Nice. They
started a legal writing course, and there was this snafu with our professor who we were told at the beginning of the course that there was no curve. And for most of law students, they're coming from the humanities where there is no curve. So when you go to law school and you find out, all of these classes are graded on a curve, it makes you nervous because, the average among a lot of smart people now is the C. So now you're really worried about your GPA and how you're going to perform. This legal writing course, we were told, was not going to be based on a curve and, graded on a curve. So we were all thrilled.
Right.
And as the semester progressed and, we started talking amongst ourselves about grades that we were receiving on assignments, we figured out, there's not a curve, but they are looking for a B+ average.
Got it.
Which in my mind is pretty similar to a curve.
Yeah, it's a form of a curve.
So there was a bit of a snafu with our professor because we brought this up to him in class, and the next class session, he was kind of a hippy-dippy guy, and he thought it would help us all if he guided us through meditation, or if he presented sort of a guided meditation to us. He started playing a tape. In class at law school, shut off all the lights, played a tape, and it was his voice guiding us through the meditation, Nick.
Does this guy have a ponytail and facial hair, and he's balding, and he's got like flannel? What does he look like?
No, he looks like who is now I'm so bad with names. Crispin Glover, I think is his name.
Okay, I don't know who that is.
Okay, so the guy the guy who I'm thinking of, this might not be the name Crispin Glover, but the guy I'm thinking of is from Back to the Future.
Okay.
It is Michael J. Fox's dad in Back to the Future.
Okay, it's been a while since I watched it. Anyway, he's a hippy dippy guy. He's leading you
That's
on
the guy he
path of
looks
faith.
like. He parted his hair down the middle.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he's a nice guy, but like, to me, it was so crazy that, yeah, he parted his hair down the middle. I'm sure he was a nice guy, but it was incredible to me that he would be physically present in the class
Mm-hmm.
and yet still play a tape for us that was his voice.
Right.
Why not just read off the paper, you know?
Yeah, he's like Cuomo. Chris Cuomo can't speak about his own coronavirus experience. He's got to read a prepared statement.
Yeah, I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Now, is he the mayor with the pierced nipples? Is that the one?
That's his brother. That's the older troglodyte-looking Andrew.
Yeah.
Chris is the one on CNN.
Right. Oh, right. The news guy.
Corona
The
News
guy.
Network.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is the mayor of New York, right?
The governor.
The governor.
Yeah, mayor.
Governor of New York. Yeah. Incredible.
So, you didn't gain much from that experience, I take it, the meditation.
No, I did not. I have not been, I mean, as shocking as it might be, because as a Mormon, I believe in some very crazy sounding things. The meditation, I think, absolutely has its benefits.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like holistic healers, and I struggle buying into that, as shocking as that might be.
Well, I think when you're doing a 30, 40-minute prayer, you're getting your brain into a meditative state, right?
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
So I think you're getting the same benefits.
Yeah. I mean, they suggest, a 40-minute meditation every day, which I'm not doing. I'm not doing 40-minute prayers every day.
Yeah.
But, it's nice to calm down, take a moment, and kind of, clear your head of what you're immediately worried about and get some perspective.
I do meditation, but I actually took a TM course a couple of years ago, and so Transcendental Meditation for the listeners out there, the folks at home in the Midwest. Yeah. And it's been good, but it's funny. Like, I was doing it very consistently for about a year, and I've been less consistent recently, especially during this pandemic. And I kind of treat it like if I don't do it in the evening, which is when I have time for it lately, it's like a treat, Like, I don't want to do it, even though it's like the best thing for me.
Yeah. Well, it's like exercise.
Yeah.
I
feel great afterward, but the process is it can feel tedious.
Yeah, it's the worst part. Getting started is the worst part. Once you're in it, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
So how religious were you raised?
I was raised pretty religious for Minnesota standards.
Okay.
Now, Minnesota's not the most zealous state. It's not part of the Bible Belt. It's
but it's a kind Midwestern state, right?
It's a kind Midwestern state, a democratic state for the most part, although
a bless your heart state.
Too close recently, and we actually Minnesota religious people, a lot of Lutherans, and Lutherans are pretty relatively reformed, a liberal part of Christianity where we have women pastors, and in some churches they welcome gays, they have gay weddings, stuff like that. Yeah. So I was glad to at least grow up with that much, although I never saw any gays that I knew of in church. We were part of a pretty big church. Yeah. And we were only really religious. I think we started going to church when I was about 8, maybe 9. It was like right after 9/11, which I feel kind of basic, like a basic. Like, was it because of 9/11? I got it. You know what? I've only pieced this together in the last couple of days watching The Sopranos with my dad. Yeah. And we're watching season 4, and that was right after 9/11. And you realize how much that obviously impacted the culture. I gotta ask them because I never put the two together, but it probably was causal that we started. Interesting. Yeah. At least correlated. Yeah, it just so happened to be, and so I got baptized around that time in that faith. As a Lutheran. As a Lutheran. And so how do they baptize as Lutherans? There's a nice natural beeswax candle. I remember that. They lit it, and they got the cross, and they got some people there, and they get the water, and they do the thing on the head. They don't dunk
okay.
you. You're not in a river or a lake, one of the
Yeah.
many beautiful lakes. To me,
Yeah.
it seems like an underutilization of the lakes. If you got them, it seems like a smite on God, you know?
Yeah, right. We're not going to use your
A
beautiful
snub. It's more
creation.
like, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting. Okay.
yeah. And it was a fine thing. I don't know. I didn't like going to church as most
Well,
people. But
what 9, 10-year-old does.
exactly. It felt difficult. But
How long was church service?
about an hour. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Pretty standard. What is it in Latter-day Saints?
Used to be 3 hours long, and now it's 2. But the time that we spend is divided.
Okay.
So what I imagine for your service, so
Mm-hmm.
correct me if I'm wrong, is an hour sort of communion meeting, or what we would call a sacrament meeting, where you're taking the bread and, for us, water. I would imagine, is it wine for Lutherans?
Yeah, that was every other week. And it's interesting. My dad, he wasn't an alcoholic, but he hasn't had a drink since the early 80s. So he would actually do grape juice.
Oh,
and the rest
sure.
of us would do the wine, which I felt pretty cool as a kid, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, getting that
little wine.
getting that early taste.
Yeah. Here's another example of Minnesota being good about germs. Rather than all these, you know, people with the goblet, you know,
Yeah.
no goblets. We had these individual little plastic cups. A
Yeah.
little bit wasteful, but you know what? I don't know. It's not that much plastic at the end of the day. So.
No, and we would do the same with plastic, and then you just
is that right?
recycle it. Yeah. Yeah. We had little
Was that with grape
trays. We would use water.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
'Cause
Straight.
after all, he turned water into wine.
Exactly. But we don't believe in any transubstantiation, transformations or anything
Yeah.
like that.
Well, maybe I'll say this for the end of the program, but that is a perfect segue. I wanted to ask about,
Yeah.
do you believe in the divinity of Jesus?
Absolutely.
So,
But when you say it, what do you mean?
well, that there's Christianity, my understanding.
Are we waiting for the satellite?
I think it's
back?
the demons to get out of the internet connection.
I feel like a satellite we're waiting for the satellite to complete its rotation or something.
Yeah, you're right. That's probably what's happening. There's
It's
some
very weird
blind spot that's happening.
Yeah. All right. So, Divinity of Christ.
Yeah.
So when you say that, what do you mean?
Well, there's the Holy Trinity, obviously, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And so Jesus being here as a corporeal whatever person, as a physical manifestation of God, was able to do miracles,
Yeah. So we have similar, but I think important, different understanding of Christ and God. So for us, Heavenly Father, God, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit are 3 separate personages, 3 separate individuals.
Okay.
We believe that Christ is the only begotten of God, and that because of that, he was able to perform the miracles that he was able to perform, which includes the atonement and the resurrection, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the atonement culminated in his resurrection.
Yeah.
So we do believe in Christ as our Savior.
Yeah, that much I knew. I thought there may have been some distinction. There is some slight distinction, but we probably could take a long time to get down to the nitty-gritty of that.
Right. But that's the basic, I think, big difference between us and those of the Lutheran or even Catholic faiths.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So how old were you before you started to question, or do you still identify as Lutheran?
I don't know. I would say that I kind of got out of religion in late college. I was part of an on-campus. I went to American University in D.C., which is a secular school.
Yeah.
And it was nice. I went to a secular high school and everything, secular school throughout. But, to be part of an on-campus thing that was sort of my own choosing was nice. It was I guess technically a Methodist, some of it. And then I did another thing, which was more of just like a random evangelical group. Good people doing good works, Habitat for Humanity, helping feed the homeless. What else did we do? There's this thing where we raised awareness and money for people who are victims of sex trafficking around the world.
Yeah.
And by the way, they were ahead of the curve on that. Like, I hadn't heard of it until then. And now the Epstein stuff comes out. So They,
Yeah.
good for them.
Now, I don't want to be on record saying these following words, but in Epstein's defense, I think sex trafficking had been around a lot longer than
Sure.
just Mr. Jeffrey. But
I think
point well taken.
The extent of the deprivation when Bill Gates, at the time, the richest man in the world. Now, listen, I don't understand what's going on with everybody's interpretation of Bill Gates, okay? A lot of words are being said. They say he created the pandemic.
Right.
I think that's a little bit harsh.
I think
it's indisputable what even the New York Times reported over the summer, which is he went to Epstein's New York townhouse on multiple occasions, late into the night.
Sure.
And he commented to his staff about a mother and his the mother's beautiful daughter. Now, why she was like a 13-year-old. Why he would need to say that is beyond me, and why he would, the richest man in the world, seek money from a guy who they don't even think was a billionaire. It's a little more than fishy, okay?
Yeah, it's interesting. But I will say this, in Bill Gates' defense, you have to say mother and beautiful daughter. It's a phrase. It's a colloquialism, if you will.
I don't know. There's so much we're not seeing. I think that's a limited hangout. Are you familiar with that term, Seth?
A limited hangout?
Yeah. That is a phrase I believe that Nixon coined himself or one of his staffers regarding the Watergate scandal. So obviously the Democrats were raided and that story was going to break. And so basically the Nixon team wanted to decide what can we reveal to the public that will let them have a story and stop asking questions and that won't implicate us. So that's what I see with the Bill Gates thing. Like if that's what we're hearing, I think it could be a lot worse what actually happened.
I see. Interesting.
Yeah, and the Clintons, I mean, Bill went to the island a bunch, all these people.
Yeah. So which one do you think would be worse for Bill Gates? If it were true that
pandemic?
Yeah, the pandemic or participating in, the deep bowels of Jeffrey Epstein's business.
They're both pretty bad. I think Republicans would probably have a worse time with the pedophile island thing because there's like this protective nature Republicans have toward children, which Democrats have too. But I feel like Democrats look at the bigger
less so.
And maybe you're more in the numbers. You're thinking about the abortion thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think more Democrats care about old people than they do about babies.
I think they care about humanity pretty unilaterally.
Maybe.
Focusing on a fetus, which is just tissue at a certain point.
Oh, boy.
This is fun.
This is another podcast. This is another podcast to be had. I love it, though. Man, so you think pandemic would be worse, really, for Bill?
On the whole, I think it would be globally.
I think it's just so much less likely. What does he have to gain? He's rich enough. He doesn't need to get us hooked on some cure for a disease he created. That makes no sense.
The theory that the crazies believe, and I don't believe it, but I listen to it and I somewhat entertain an idea is, the elites want to have fewer people on the planet, to have more resources for themselves and all that.
Yeah.
And we're not going to need as many people, and maybe this is a test run when we have automation. Maybe that's
maybe.
I don't buy
it. The last guest I had was Crystal Chatz.
I haven't heard that episode. Is that released?
It has not come out yet.
Okay.
She gets into it a little bit. She I think wholeheartedly believes that he has absolutely. She calls him the Antichrist.
Wow.
In our conversation. So it'll be a fun one for you to listen to when that one comes out in a couple of weeks.
Yes, indeed.
Interesting. So you were at American University, hanging with the Methodists, hanging with the evangelicals.
Oh, dang it. It did it again. All right.
You're back.
We're back.
So you're hanging at American University with the evangelicals, the Methodists.
Yep.
That caused you to question? Was it being out of the house that you stopped going to church?
No. So
what led you away?
I was with them, and it was all nice and good. And then it was the business folks, in fact. I decided to join a business fraternity, which called a fraternity, but it also had women in it. And no weird stuff in the initiation. No corona, new corona type thing.
Like that's not when you found out that you were homosexual.
No,
you were gay. Okay.
Yeah, no, I knew that a long time before.
Yeah.
But I just, so I didn't have time as much for the religious stuff. And then I studied abroad in Hong Kong the following semester. And I met some of the nicest people I've ever met. And they were not religious at all. And I was like, you know what? Maybe you don't need religion to be a good person, which I had often used as an excuse, you might say, or as a framework for my good behavior was religion. But that was a number of years in the wilderness, so to speak, where I was just not doing religious stuff, not going to. I haven't been at church in a long time anyway, but I just started reading the Bible again a few months ago. I've got a really good friend who encouraged me to do so, and he's like one of these very non-pushy Christians and a very good person.
Yeah.
And so that's encouraging when somebody can just live it versus forcing it on you.
Right. Right. Which is, I think, the way it should be.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting. So what version of the Bible are you reading? King James?
I've switched between that and the, what do they call it? The New English version or some. Let me look it up again right now. But how about you? What do you, it's the King James and then.
King James, baby.
Yeah.
King Jimmy all the way.
And there's only one version, obviously, of the Book of Mormon, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's translated in different languages, but yes, only one version of it. Yeah.
English Standard Version. I also check that out.
Oh, that's the one you use. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Very fun. So sort of a natural falling away as you saw other people being good without your religious framework.
Yeah. And I felt like I didn't need to do it. And that was, And my political views were starting to change. I grew up pretty Republican, although a Minnesota Republican is a pretty moderate Republican for the most part. Like, my parents, especially my dad, considered himself a Republican and like a George Bush Republican, where you're practical, kind of a engineer. My grandpa was an engineer. He had a pocket protector. You know, he was a Republican, but he also believed in science and math and all these things.
Yeah.
And they would raise taxes if they needed to. That was not the end of the world to raise taxes.
Sure.
So anyway, that's kind of the framework I had. I consider myself pretty moderate.
Yeah.
And I even thought, we should probably have a third party or more parties.
Hey.
But then I realized, I think the Democrats are pretty good. So I'm on the Democratic team for last 5 years or so.
Yeah. Okay. Good deal. Sure. So do you still feel a connection with God, or what's your current religious stance or spiritual stance if you don't want to go, religious?
No, religious stance. I think Jesus is as good as we've gotten, certainly. I think Jesus is the one I believe in, and just the basic message is love, as I'm sure many people would put it, but I think it's just, obviously it's a love that it surpasses all understanding, and to turn the other cheek is obviously one metaphor, one analogy, which I think a lot of religions and a lot of people, Christians included, don't practice. And so that's what I try to do, and I think it can be difficult because part of love can be tough love, and can be trying to help somebody to grow as a person. So anyway,
do you believe in an afterlife?
Yeah.
What do you envision for the afterlife?
I don't know. I really, it's one of these things where I don't exactly know if it's going to be the clouds and the Peter and the gate thing and all, but or what it's going to look like. But I don't know. I'm very inarticulate at the moment, because religion is kind of like the market for me. It's kind of like the stock market. It's kind of like I have another analogy I wanted to bring up. Let me look that up, because you can't know everything about it. There's no ability for people to know everything about it, right? You can't. You weren't there with Joseph Smith. I wasn't there with Jesus. You have to have a certain level of faith. And so it's kind of the same with the stock market and the efficient markets hypothesis, which is to say that people price in stuff into the market, And same with 9/11. I wasn't there. I can't see if Tower 7 was neutroned or whatever
It
the
was an
fuck.
inside job.
Right. I can't know if there was stuff there, but I
Yeah.
have to trust that I don't believe the 9/11 stuff too much because I don't give it time. But the point being, there's
But
certain
if you
things you
really
can't
looked
know,
into it,
Seth.
yeah.
Oh my God, I gotta take off my tracksuit. I'm sweating. The point is, I don't know what's gonna be the afterlife, but I
Yeah.
have faith that Jesus' message of love is the best one. And if you believe in that, and if you're a good person, I think good things will happen.
Yeah. All right. Final question for you, and then we'll get into what's the deal with Mormons, and you can
Okay.
officially ask me some questions.
Oh, that's exciting.
So yeah, the final question is, why or what do you find keeps you holding on to this idea of Jesus Christ? Why has that stuck with you?
Well, I took a world religions class in high school, and I've met people of all major backgrounds throughout my life. I'm lucky to know people of all backgrounds. And, for one thing, the most popular one, there's got to be something to that, right? It's back to the efficient market hypothesis.
Hold on. What do you mean most popular one? Because there are more, right? There are more Muslims, Hindus,
No, there
Buddhists, right? Aren't there more?
Christianity is the number one, baby.
I'm gonna look this up right now.
It's the number one religion. Islam is it's a growing second.
Yeah.
It's still got many tens, if not hundreds of millions, fewer people.
By straight up population? But I mean, there have got to be more Chinese people that don't believe in any God at all than there are
some
Christians.
Chinese Christians too. No,
yeah, absolutely there are.
There are like 2.5 billion Christians, something like that. There's a lot of Christians. But anyway, the point being.
All right, I'm gonna look it up. But yeah, fair enough. For the sake of argument.
I do think the message of love is particularly resonant, and it does differ from a lot of religions, which are more tit for tat, an eye for an eye. And I think it's better.
Why won't this focus?
Oh, yeah, I don't know. What does it say? Popular religions.
You're right. You were correct. Christianity 2.3 billion.
Look at that, pretty good.
Islam 1.9.
So, what I was saying before we cut out is I do think selflessness and love are just amazing things that can't be overemphasized enough. And you're going to get labeled as it's corny or obviously it's a very robust message that Christians have and a lot of religions have, which says that you're going to be mocked because, like, I'll bring up Christian stuff and people will laugh. And I might have to do it jokingly because if I do it heavy-handedly, people are just going to totally turn away.
Right.
But I think sometimes the corniest stuff is the stuff that is corny because we hear it so often. And I do think there's something in the human brain where if you hear it and it doesn't kill you and it doesn't excite you, you're not necessarily going to pay attention to it. But it's often what you need to hear the most.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Well, I can get behind that. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Jesus, so I respect that deeply. All right. Excellent. Now it's your turn. What's the deal? What's the deal with Mormons?
Oh, man. Well, okay. This is maybe less of a Mormon question specifically and more specific to you, but I want to know for you what, Seth Lawrence, keeps you deeply rooted in your faith. And I take it you grew up Mormon, but what type of exploration have you done, and how do you weigh Mormonism, versus any other form of Christianity? How do you know that it's true? How do you believe Joseph Smith?
Yeah, I had an experience. I mean, I purposely read through the Book of Mormon on my own when I was around 12, and it took me a few months, to do it on my own every day. And at the end of the reading experience, I prayed and asked for a witness, and I can't go back on that. I felt very strongly that the Book of Mormon is the Word of God, that it teaches us how to be better people, that it teaches us more of the gospel of Jesus Christ, then at least it fills in some of the holes I think are there in the Bible.
You have an example?
Yeah. Well, so for Mormonism, we talked about the difference in sort of the Godhead, the Trinity, and a lot of that comes from not only Joseph Smith's personal experience of seeing a vision. So his claim to fame is that he grew up in New York. He struggled with finding a religion that spoke to him spiritually. Ended up reading in the Bible where in James it says, you can, if you lack wisdom, ask of God. So he ended up praying and saw a vision. He saw Jesus Christ and Heavenly Father, and they were two separate individual personages, two people with physical bodies that look like us. And Jesus told him in this vision that there was no religion on the earth, that Joseph Smith would be given the ability to restore Jesus Christ's gospel and church on the earth. And part of that was translating this new book of scripture, this Book of Mormon. So the Book of Mormon also discusses, I guess a more finite example is what happens to children before they are, of age religiously to be baptized. I know that there are a lot of, like in the Catholic faith, babies are baptized. And I don't know what age Protestants are baptized, but in the Mormon faith, it's 8 years old.
Gotcha.
And before baptism, if a child dies, we do not condemn them to hell. They are saved in the atonement of Jesus Christ. So we believe you cannot commit sin before the age of accountability, which we prescribe as 8.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that's seventh, you're 7 years old, 364 days, no culpability, and then the next day, boom, it just sets in like lightning.
It weighs down. It weighs down on you. That's and for us, the sacrament which we take every week, which is the communion, the bread, the water, for us is a renewal of the covenants that we make at baptism. So in a way, we're sort of rebaptized every week. So the idea is just try to be good, better and better each day. And if not, every week, right? Improve yourself. You sort of get to reset every week. But yeah, I mean, if you're more curious about maybe some of the other things, I don't know what other holes are necessarily left that, I could compile maybe a list and send it to you if you're really curious.
Sure, why not?
But yeah, we also think that the priesthood was lost, that our church is the only church that has the proper authority to act in the name of God. So I don't know. But for me, the reason I haven't left my faith is my testimony, my experience with the Book of Mormon primarily. There have been multiple experiences after, reading the Book of Mormon that confirmed to me my faith, at least in the sense that I have a personal relationship with God and with Jesus Christ, and that they love me and that they're mindful of me and my trials, right?
Yeah.
And successes, which I think is which I find comforting. I have not done much exploration, at least not, I've never really considered joining any other faith. I just don't feel, for me, if it were not, the Latter-day Saint faith, then I would most likely just be agnostic. I wouldn't go to any church because no other church offers us godhood, and no other church offers us the ability to make planets, Nick. Like that's, you got to go big, go big or go home.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did take a world religion course at Brigham Young University, which is a religious university, but it's, I think, only religious in the sense that it's run by the church. It's owned by the Latter-day Saint Faith Church, and there are certain religious requirements. That is, you have to take a course in the Book of Mormon every semester while you're there. You don't have to be a member of the church in order to attend the university. You don't have to attend church in order to be a student at the university. But other than that, I was in secular school, just like you. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I just feel like my studying of other world religions, I kept coming to them in the sense of, I believe all truth comes from God.
Yeah.
Good things come from God. And when I saw beautiful things, good things in other religions, I just felt like, yes, this is more testimony, more evidence to me that my religion is also correct.
Yeah. Hey, I had a
So,
fun thought today on a walk
yeah,
with my dad here in Minnesota, and I was just thinking about religion and Christianity, and how I imagine it's the same thing in Mormonism, where Jesus set us free from all these crazy old laws about pigs and fabrics
sure.
and all that stuff.
Yeah,
And I feel like the reason for that, and obviously the literalists, or whatever you want to call them, the Pharisees, were very much into following the laws and like, I'm better than you and all that stuff. But I think maybe part of that is, if it's from your heart, it's more robust than like a bad set of rules that aren't good for every situation, right? Like,
sure.
rules can't get you out of every situation. You have to trust your heart and most of life. I mean, you
Yeah,
have to be moved by something other than, oh, it says in section 4, letter A, whatever, that we should
right,
do this.
right.
You gotta have a more robust model that drives your behavior. So anyway, I
Yeah.
was thinking about
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of Jesus's life was breaking the rules
yeah.
of the Mosaic law at the very
Hmm.
least, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And that's why I think for me there is a distinction between the Latter-day Saint Church
Yeah.
and the gospel that I've been taught
Yeah.
in that church. My church hasn't taken the friendliest stance on things and has made mistakes, I think, in the past.
Hmm.
But I don't think the gospel is imperfect because of that, or not true, right? Not real,
Sure.
not accurate.
But interpretation can be difficult. Yeah. I'll have one quick analogy, which is, like these models about when we should open the country, close the country, all this stuff.
Yeah,
There's this very smart guy I keep talking about since the coronavirus. If you can
yeah,
hear me. Yep.
yeah. I
This
can hear
guy,
you.
Nassim Nicholas Taleb, who wrote a book called The Black Swan. And in
Yeah,
it, he talks about highly improbable events. And anyway, he has been saying, he predicted we'd have a terrible pandemic
mm,
2007. And he actually had some of the earliest closure guidelines in January of this year for what we should have done, could have prevented huge widespread pandemic, which we're facing.
yeah,
And anyway, the point being, he says a flawed model, if you follow it closely, is worse than no model at all. Like all
mm,
about spreading, and about the WHO back in January said themselves on Twitter, there's no evidence of human-to-human contact. Well, your model was wrong, and
yeah,
so you should have taken a more precautionary principle. You should have, anyway. The point being, I feel like you can kind of say that's a very practical secular thing, but I think it can be a religious context too, that if you have this crazy set of laws, they're not always going to work. And if you can't be sure of them, then just trust your heart and be more
yeah.
cautious.
Right. And I think relating it back to the WHO,
Yeah,
don't allow your church to be owned by the Chinese,
that's right.
right?
The CCP is not for us.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, Nick, this has been such a pleasure,
This is
and
a delight. Thank you, Seth.
we'll figure out how to make this without all the technical difficulties. Did you have any final questions? And then plug whatever you want. Any big
Oh,
shows
man.
you got coming up
Yeah, baby.
in person,
Uh,
on Zoom?
this was really helpful, and I will look forward to reading a small list you compile.
Yeah,
Well, okay, a quick question. You said
Yeah.
you have a testament to your faith, and with the book. So was that like a thing you gave in front of the church, or is that like a running document? What does that look like?
Oh, interesting. No, the word I used was testimony, which
Testimony.
I
Thank you.
use in the sense of a personal witness. In the Mormon faith, every first Sunday of the month typically is a fast and testimony meeting where it's like open mic night at the Mormon church. So everybody, whoever wants to, can get up, take a few moments to. We are encouraged to keep our comments brief and focused on the Savior and our knowledge, or our personal relationship, what we gained, what we learned, what we want to testify of.
Gotcha.
Right, regarding Jesus Christ and his gospel.
Sure.
But no, there's no formal document that I have written down. I probably should do that just for posterity's sake, but I haven't done that yet, and it certainly has not been a formal address to my congregation.
Fair enough. I have stuff like that I've just started jotting down. Where, like, this is a crazy thing. I was playing Jeopardy with Ryan, the cable viewer, a couple days ago, and I win all the time, which I think that shows.
But you also cheat, apparently.
No, I don't. I'm just so much better than him that he gets jealous. But the point is, they think I watch the episodes early. I don't watch them.
Right. Well, they also blame the delay.
Yeah,
the lag online. Anyway.
Yeah, there's never a delay, and then they blame it. And I say, you're welcome to host it, but they're too lazy. So
of course they are.
I think my always being right is part of God's divine plan, but also just a couple days ago, the question in Final Jeopardy was, and I hadn't read the Bible in a couple nights because I was feeling lazy and I was listening to podcasts and stuff like the question was about Luke chapter 10, and what was the last chapter I had read? Luke chapter 9. I was halfway through it, and then the question was Luke chapter 10. So if I had kept reading, and then my dad had health issues recently, and we were very blessed that they weren't much worse, and it looked like it was going to be terrible. And anyway, just like a lot of things to be very thankful for. So
yeah. And for me, the thing I keep coming back to, especially when I talk to people who don't believe in God at all, or who are questioning their belief in God, is the idea that I choose. And, you asked me why, I keep choosing to believe in God. Sure. I think you could look at all of those things, or a lot of those things you mentioned, and say, oh, that's just coincidence.
Right.
Mere chance, circumstance. And yes, you can, I think, choose to look at it that way, or you can choose to look at what I find more comforting, right? There are certain good things that I think God gives us, little sort of nudges, right? Kind of winks, like, no, I got you. I got you.
And by the way, look at all around you. It's crazy what we're looking at. Like, I'm looking at all these plants I got in my apartment here. I love them.
Yeah, exactly. There's a verse in the Book of Mormon where a man is talking to a sort of an anti-prophet, someone who's, going around saying Jesus doesn't exist. And this prophet in the Book of Mormon basically says exactly what you did. I look around me and I say, how can there not be a God, given all of these creations, Big Bang may have been just his tool that he used scientifically to make everything. I don't know. Doesn't bother me one way or the other. So, all right, you got anything coming up you want to plug? Well,
I will be on Ryan the Cable Viewer's Instagram live show in this Friday. So.
Oh, excellent. Well, this will be out long after.
Oh, excellent. but I'll probably be doing another platinum package again soon. So look for me on Ryan shows in perpetuity.
Yeah. He's a great guy. Good old Ryan. Well, sweet Nick, this was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. And I hope you have a good week.
You too.
Thanks.
See ya.